Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Lights on Data show. Today, we're going to be talking about how modern software systems and data are changing the advanced machinery development industry. So, we're going to be talking about robotics, drones, space vehicles, all the fun stuff. To do so, my guest here is John Conafay. He's the co-founder and CEO at Integrate. Welcome, John.
Thank you so much for having me, George.
My pleasure. You're a veteran, and you're also a veteran in the space industry. It's amazing that you have all this experience, and now you're leading Integrate. How does that feel overall?
Definitely feels like I've lived a few different lives. I was prior to the Air Force. I started a small little record label straight out of high school, and then so it seems like I've lived quite a few lives.
Nice. So things were spinning in all your careers.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I'm interested about this advanced machinery development overall. I don't know a lot about it. I wonder, what does that typical landscape looks like?
Complicated. So a typical complex machine takes hundreds, if not or thousands, of people and disciplines to put together. So when I say complex machine, I'm talking about a car, a robot, a rocket, a satellite, a medical device, anything, a laptop, cell phone, anything around you. It probably takes thousands and thousands of people to build across multiple countries and multiple disciplines. And the tools that we use today to build those things are not necessarily conducive to collaborating in the way that's necessary or in a very fluid way. And I noticed this firsthand when I was working at Spire Global, Astronus, and ABL Space Systems. You have a whole bunch of inflows that come in from vendors. That there might be a vendor out there that can only build this one very critical part to the complex system that you've built, whether it's GPS or inertial navigation system or something like this. And you have to stay very closely tied with them. Your entire schedule could be dependent on that one shop. Or you could be working with 20 different shops that you have to constantly go back and forth on, say, is this design actually buildable, or is it creating literal and sometimes figurative friction? Yeah, a lot of complexity, a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving people constantly.
Right. Yeah, so that's the whole supply chain and the whole project as a whole. And as you mentioned, it includes different people from different countries and different parts that need to be integrated. I assume maybe even on the software piece, it's also not easy.
Yeah,
that needs to fit in there too.
Yeah, firmware for hardware, rather, is hardware doesn't really do much without software or firmware. No. I'm trying to make the distinction between what we build which is software as a service to facilitate the builds of hardware. But we see so many companies now that are coming out as technology companies as opposed to whatever they were building before, because software is such an integrated part of the process. And the pace at which software is built or the strategies used, such as Agile, don't necessarily fit into the waterfall aspect of hardware builds, where you have to build something physically before you can start something else in a lot of cases. So there's a lot of complexity in being able to merge those worlds, and a lot of, again, friction and pain from it.
And with all these complexities and moving parts, how would one keep track of everything, make sure that the project will be delivered on time and all the moving pieces are going to fall into their right places? Are they using a particular piece of software? Are they each kind of do their own thing? There's so many data points that you got to keep track of.
Yeah. So every company that we speak to has pretty much the exact same story, where you reach for Jira at first because it's seemingly less expensive and accessible, and you can just get spun up, and the software teams generally know how to use it. But then your road mapping capabilities aren't quite what you want. So then you reach for something like Smartsheet or Project to get better dependency flow and see what's blocking what and things like this. And then as you mature as an organization, around 75 to 150 people, you'll start to look for requirement solutions. So you have all of these sort of point solutions. Somewhere in the mix are going to be procurement software and other things like this, but it's pretty much that flow. You go Jira, Smartsheet, Jama, something along these lines, and none of them really talk to each other. They're all point solutions, but they're all meant for the exact same purpose, to build this thing on time and accurately and to the best of everybody's abilities. So when you have a bunch of these systems that are just like ephemera floating around this dark matter that is the actual product, there's a lot of friction. And I've used that word too many times, but what we say is every time you have to drop the baton or pass the baton is an opportunity to drop it. So you're introducing risk by having these disparate systems that don't necessarily communicate with each other. And that's why we built Integrate, because there wasn't any real modern compliant solution.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about Integrate and how it fills in that gap then.
Yeah, so we decided to go with less of a point solution, for better or worse, because there's terms like boiling the ocean or building a lot of things at once. We decided to go, instead of a point solution, we realized that the majority of these companies use maybe 10 to 15% of the actual functionality of these gigantic systems like Jira and Smartsheet and Jama and all of this. And so if we could build a system that put the product up front in your face, essentially, and then all of these aspects like tasking, milestones, requirements, components attached to that product vision in the same place and were as interconnected as they could be, we thought that would be something really spectacular to be able to benefit. So while we might not have all of the requirements features of Jama or all of the intricate tasking and flexibility of certain other software, which I think we do on that side, but we wanted to build something more holistic that allowed people to first have everything in one place, and then second, be able to, I'll get into that later, but essentially with so much software now, you're beholden to the four walls of your organization because enterprise software is so locked down. And we wanted the ability for you to, as opposed to having to dissect and rip apart your source of truth to send out to stakeholders, which is another series of passing the baton or steps of passing the baton, downloading it, sending it via email, waiting for them to get back to you, all of these things. We wanted you to be able to keep your source of truth and then parse out the smallest, most granular parts to your external stakeholders. So that's what we built with Integrate.
And can you walk me through a typical engagement that you would have with the new client? How does that start, first of all, or who do you get in touch with? Is it the projects team, their development, their procurement team? Who do you usually work with?
Yeah, so we have a lot of empathy for the engineering and technical program management teams because a lot of their purpose is to diminish risk as much as humanly possible. And we're saying, hey, try out this new system in the middle of your build or design, which imparts risk inherently. So it's definitely a multi-step aspect where you have to get somebody that wants to implement it and is willing to take on the risk, which is usually at the engineering or systems engineer level because they're so overwhelmed with data and you're doing engineering at risk because you don't have a data history or an audit log of every decision you made. And then their manager will get brought in or will start speaking to their manager in tandem, who will have to say green light a pilot or not. But it's really operations that holds the purse strings if we want to go for something larger than a pilot. How hard can it be? You just have to sell to three completely different levels of the organization, make sure all of their goals and whims are aligned toward the same goal.
Yeah. Do you have some examples on maybe some specific projects, organizations, and you don't need to name names, that have used Integrate and they've clearly shown help and an advancement towards what they were trying to do there?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of our coolest, also impartial, and we did start in the space industry but now we're branching out. But we have one of the largest customers in the world who also, I just really appreciate our stakeholders because they're so forward thinking with the Space Force specifically. Within the Space Force, we have some really heavy adopters, and that's been spectacular. As you stated before, I'm a veteran, so it means a lot to me to be able to continue to serve our country in that way. And then two other companies and customers that I absolutely love, Nanorex out of DC and Houston, who have deployed something like 2,000 experiments onto the International Space Station. And so when they send us a video or something, it's astronauts manipulating something that was coordinated using Integrate, and we all just get really, really excited. But I think in situations like that, it's really their ability to coordinate with their customer, because you have so many different stakeholders to get something to the International Space Station, so much complex passing of the baton or communication that we facilitate that a lot. And then we have ESAR Aerospace out of Germany, who's building a 1-ton small launch rocket for transportation of small satellites as well. And they've just been incredible in giving us feedback and utilizing their customers as well. And I think we've made a difference because it feels like a custom portal for every customer that they have to interact with.
So is Integrate mainly working within the space industry?
Yeah, we started in the space industry because that's where all my contacts were. And that's where I saw the initial problem, where most recently I worked at ABL Space Systems. Before that, I was at a company called Spaceflight, which aggregated a whole bunch of small satellites onto larger rockets. And then before that, I was on the satellite side at Astronus Inspire. And where I really saw the issue was we had 30 customers on a single rocket launch, and none of them could see any of each other's data or anything whatsoever. But you had something like 3,000 requirements and tasks and milestones for each customer and each satellite on a single launch. So whenever you added a satellite to a launch, it was exponential complexity, not linear. And we had no real good way to communicate directly with our customers on the timelines and milestones. And one thing that holds true always about space is that timelines move to the right because launch is very complex and difficult. And so that's really where I started with the problem. It was like, okay, there has to be a way to bifurcate all this customer data while giving them a very bespoke custom experience, such as a portal, and have everything on our side in one place so that we can look at it without going crazy trying to go to Smartsheet or Jira or all these different places for all this different ephemera. And then as we were selling the space industry, we got in a bunch of customers that were like, yeah, this is exactly what we needed. And then we started hearing from a lot of our engineering friends who were like, wait, this is like the systems engineering program management tool that we've been waiting for. Why are you just building for the space industry? Like, we really need something like this. We have to deal with our vendors and our contract manufacturers and all of these things and pull all of these threads together with 2 to 3 decade old software that generally isn't compliant with ITAR and things like this.
So it's not only just helping with the advanced machinery development piece, but also, again, with that communication with your stakeholders, main stakeholders, your vendors, your suppliers, your clients. And of course, that has a big impact on the development itself, on the whole life cycle.
Exactly. Yeah. It's if we can minimize that I say it so much internally that I'm sure everybody's sick of hearing it, and I'm sure our customers are sick of hearing it. But if we can minimize the number of times the baton has to be passed, we think it minimizes the inherent risk to such complexity, and will go a long way to expediting this rapid iteration that everybody's striving for.
I mean, one story that reminds me of on sort of passing the baton is back in I think 1999, when NASA launched its Mars orbiter, and they're in collaboration with Lockheed, and the whole, I quote it a lot because it speaks volumes in terms of the need for data quality, data governance within our organization. But they were basically using different types of measurements, and it missed the mark. They lost $200 million worth of a mission.
And I'm probably more touchy-feely than I should be, but as far as these things goes, or just more emotional about these things than I should be. But that's also an entire decade of people's work and lives and hopes and dreams and everything. One thing that's very intense about the space industry is that when you're working on programs for NASA or ESA or whomever it is, it's at least a 30-year life's work. So hearing about those things and mistakes that can be made, and the inherent risk, again, of passing the baton in that way is something we're definitely trying to prevent. Yeah.
Right. And even when the baton needs to be passed, that it's done in the proper way, and all that communication is in place to make sure that what you know, they know, there's no assumptions in between, and everything goes smoothly as planned.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I wonder, how do you see the role of data and AI now that everybody talks about AI? How do you see these kind of come into focus and changing the advanced machinery development industry?
Yeah, everybody thinks that that I am an AI skeptic, which I am not. I am an AI hype skeptic. Whenever I get the question, I'm like, I was at an event 2 years ago that every other company, 80% of the companies were crypto companies. And
Right.
then I was at the same event 3 months ago, and 80% of the companies were AI companies. And
Yep.
that's how I feel about it. Like that's at the same time, it is truly remarkable and such a cool demonstration of how policy, how absolutely everything leading to breakthroughs is intermingled. So policy, our power grid, chip manufacturers, NVIDIA becoming the most valuable company in the world, and the fact that I'm not going to say the fact that I've spoken to a few AI experts, but the AI gurus or people that I really respect have been doing this for 20, 25 years. And they're like, yeah, there hasn't really been a huge breakthrough in AI outside of the amount of compute that we're able to throw at these things. So Moore's law kicks off again. And then seeing before the articles came out about nuclear energy and deals that are, but seeing that the upper limit for the possibilities for AI is literally how much power we can produce for these
Right.
data centers in a clean and sustainable way, so as not to
Right.
just destroy everything. Just really fascinating. And then it's how do you reckon with whether clean or nuclear is clean energy and different things like this. It's just, I love that aspect of it. I think we're going to have a really beautiful long tail of AI being super, super effective for some applications, and also this spike of hype leveling out just like every other
Right.
spike has. Yeah.
At least until we're going to get a breakthrough in the either energy consumption or the way we're producing energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of the future, what do you see the future of integrate be? What are some of the next steps that you're looking at?
Yeah. So data is massively important to the entire process of building hardware. We're not touching test data, but you have test data, you have requirement verifications, you have decisions. So actual behavioral data, which is what excites me the most about Integrate, this collaborative aspect. We built our structure and our data structure and infrastructure to be able to save all decision points for our customers, so that as we build more features or as we start to dip our toes into machine learning, we have our co-founder has 2 degrees in machine learning and has deployed applications publicly for large organizations. We've set up everything to be able to utilize this data in a spectacular way for our customers. Like, I think we built something really powerful right now that allows them to do things in ways that they couldn't before. But the next step or the next iteration of Integrate is once we get approvals data harnessed in a way that shows, okay, it's this one point or part of the organization that is holding up specific approvals and is causing kind of a bottleneck of engineering resources, supply chain resources, et cetera. That kind of behavioral risk data, I think, is easy to obscure and hide without really rich collaborative data like we were able to get in Integrate. So that's what I really have my sights on and what I'm really excited about. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's I like how that will be into focus, and you can always put a dollar figure to all the holdups as well, and then you can change that behavior, hopefully, by showcasing all these things.
That's a lot of when we have a light bulb moment with some of our customers, especially when we talk about the future of Integrate, it's usually around that where they're like, oh, wait, every decision we're making now that we don't have tracked, we won't have access to mine later for our own risk analysis and data. So we're doing engineering at risk without a system in place. And I'm like, exactly. And they're like, and you're deploying 2 to 3 times a week. So we're actively seeing through these demos the improvements. Yeah. So we built a lot of trust in our ability to deliver on that data promise later.
Sounds great. And who knows, maybe you'll have an AI tool in there writing some of those emails as well and communications.
Yeah. Yep.
The new Jarvis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for putting the lights on the advanced machinery development industry and how that's changing and how Integrate plays an integral part to all of this. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Likewise.